Welcome to Healthy Buzz, the podcast for women who are craving honest answers in a supported community. Hosted by Brandy Homerding, a certified nutrition therapy practitioner who believes your body isn't broken, but the narrative around women's health is. Each week, we're diving deep into holistic health topics, challenging the one-size-fits-all approach, and empowering you to trust your own informed intuition. Get ready to feel seen, supported, and seriously informed. This is Healthy Buzz, where collaboration meets unfiltered transparency in women's health. Hi, Healthy Buzz listeners. Today we are talking about a different part of health and wellness that often gets overlooked. Today we're discussing financial wellness. And joining me for this conversation is Lisa Eaton of Firm Footing Financial Planning. Lisa has a background unlike any other. For over 20 years, Lisa was a physical therapist, and now she sees her work in financial planning as physical therapy for your money. With both a doctorate in physical therapy and a master's degree in financial planning, Lisa helps individuals navigate their financial health and overall well-being. She has founded her own firm because she believes that everyone deserves solid financial advice without the shame, guilt, or pressure of sales. Lisa, welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Brandy. It's lovely to be here.
I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. It's a little bit of a different journey than what I usually have for conversations, but I think that this is such an important aspect to somebody's overall health and wellness journey. So talk to me, because you did a big shift. You were a physical therapist, and then you shifted into financial planning, which is, some would say, like completely opposite worlds. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey and transition.
Sure. So the seed of it started when I was actually a physical therapy student. I met a man who was doing volunteer financial planning for people, young families in his community. And he spoke very passionately about how important it is to get financial education and financial advice before it's too late, effectively before you make decisions that are really hard to undo. But I was about to graduate from physical therapy school, so I thought this was great. It was not an aspect of financial planning I had ever thought about. I had thought financial planning was largely men in suits in glass offices, and you had to have a lot of money to get that kind of advice. So fast forward 20 years, I had owned a physical therapy practice. I had had employees who I was concerned about their financial health and also trying to manage a business. So sort of felt that tension of resources are limited and making good decisions is important. So when it was time for a career shift, my brain kind of went back to that original idea 20 plus years ago. So I explored what it is to be a financial planner. I took some classes, and then I'm like, yep, this feels like physical therapy for money. This feels like I can have that same relationship with people that I loved as a physical therapist, but just focus in a different kind of content area. What is your pain point? What is it that you want to change in your life? What is it that's keeping you from living the life that you want, but just about money and not so much about your physical body? So
I love that. Beautiful way to bring that all together, bring both worlds together to make this beautiful conversation. And I feel like the conversations around money, there's so much stigma and it's taboo to talk about money. And something that you touched on too is this very masculine energy or male dominated field when it comes to financial planning. So a lot of women maybe don't feel like they have the knowledge or the capability of taking control of their finances. So I would love to unpack that a little bit more. And why is there such a stigma around finances, and maybe even specifically for women?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. Financial planning is still more male centric than female in terms of who's there, but it's changing dramatically. And that's the wonderful thing is there are now financial planners who are trying to represent everyone. And for women, it wasn't that long ago that women couldn't get a mortgage on their own. They had to have a male cosigner. That was decades, not hundreds of years ago, right? And so how women are engaged in their financial life is still evolving. There are lots of ways you can be a partnered person, you can be a single person, but a lot of your ideas come from your childhood. And so looking at your parents, and your parents have their own trauma about money, their own beliefs about money, and it is very hard to unpack what you just absorbed as a child. Did you talk about money Maybe, maybe not. Were you always afraid that there wasn't going to be enough money? And that was kind of the thing that you were subconsciously absorbing in your household, even if your parents actually had plenty of money. So much of what we take into our adult life and how we interact with money comes from those formative experiences. And unless you can kind of step back and say, what do I really think and feel about this? You're just going to kind of keep rolling with it because there isn't a culture of talking about it more openly. That's just not where we are in America. There can be shame around having money. There can be shame around not having money. Like it can go in all directions. There's a lot of shiny objects that people like to have or display in their lives. And that doesn't necessarily reflect that they have money. It just reflects the shiny object choice that they made. So there's just lots of ways it's presented without anchoring the human into their own experience.
I feel like that is so relatable for so many different things. One, a lot of the work that I do with my clients is like unpacking their relationship with food. Where did some of these start? Same thing with money. Like our younger years are so impactful for like the way that we view our relationship with different things, people, food, money, parents, all that good stuff, like comes from like our childhood and what we were modeled and what was maybe talked or not talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
And like much to your point about food, like you can be healthy at any body shape, size, or whatever. You can have a healthy relationship with money independent of net worth. It's more about what your relationship with it is than any magic number. There are no magic numbers. There's what is your life and how are your values connected to your living of that life. So
something that I thought of, and I don't know if you find this to be true or not, that do you find that people maybe who are running a little bit of more of a untrustworthy financial planning thing could be preying on women's vulnerability around money?
100%. It's interesting how many clients I have come to me who actually have another financial advisor, and they're starting to get the sense that maybe I'm not getting all the information I need, or maybe they're charging me in a way that I feel like isn't giving me value, right? It's very easy in lots of fields, finance also, like there's a lot of jargon and a lot of lingo and a lot of like just talking about this, that, and the other thing in a way that can make someone feel intimidated, feel excluded from asking questions, all of these things that allow people to build their knowledge. And if you're more knowledgeable, then you're more empowered to make your own decisions. And you're not as dependent on someone just talking fast and deciding for you. There's lots of ways people can have relationships with financial advisors and financial planners and with themselves, but there's so much like smoke and mirrors around it that I think it becomes hard for someone to just be brave enough to step forward and say, I don't know what you're talking about. Please explain it to me. Like, how many times are you willing to do that in one meeting with someone? It should be infinite, but it's really intimidating.
Yeah, yeah. And I think somebody who is open to receiving all of those questions is going to be the best person for you, who can take the time and take the care and explain things in terms that are digestible for us to understand who are not immersed in the financial world so much. So you mentioned something about like shiny objects. So there's often like trendy investment ideas or like these shiny objects that can be very distracting. So in your experience, what are some small habits that or ways that we can differentiate between the smoke and mirrors and what actually is something that we should be striving for with our financial health?
Yeah. So when I think about financial wellness, like there's some basic things I would consider like the brushing and flossing, getting good sleep and movement every day kind of habits. You need to be able to live within your income that you have. The money that's coming in and the money that's going out have to be balanced. That's first and foremost. But that also assumes that under that is you have an emergency fund. So you've been able to save some extra because that is now the resilience that you need, right? If living within your means and paying off your credit cards every month are kind of the beginning, having some resilience in an emergency fund is the next step. That to me is like a really baseline financial wellness plan that can be true for anyone from the beginning, like 18, 19, coming out into their first adulthood relationship with money to all the way through retirement. And then after that, if you've achieved those things and you're keeping that balance, then you want to start talking about like, okay, workplace benefits, retirement plans. How do you maximize what your employer may or may not be able to give you? Often people in workplaces have a matching to a retirement account. That is free money, and we like free money always. If you're self-employed, you have different options for retirement accounts as well. You can take advantage of those. And then ultimately, the next layer is like investing in a brokerage account where you're actually investing money in the stock market. And the goal of the last tier is really to build your wealth, right? And again, there's not magic to the number of wealth. It really depends on what your expenses are and what kind of life you want to live. But the more you can have the habits that lead to that, the more resilience you have, the more choices you have. And ultimately, all of this is about how does this reflect your values? That to me is like the final piece of financial wellness. It's not a dollar value. It's what does having money choices mean for you in your life? So you can take two people, same amount of money, same options. They look at their credit card statement. How does your credit card statement reflect your values? So one person or a couple has like, oh, we ate out $1,000 this month. And they look at that though, and they go, oh, we went on a date night. And that's supporting our relationship, which is super important to us. Introduce novelty and time together. We went out with friends, also building community. This is great. We went to explore a new restaurant in a new culture. And so, right, novelty, these are all important values versus someone else who's like, oh, wow, I spent that much money. How did I spend that much money on eating out? Oh, I've been so busy. I mean to cook, but I just don't have the time. So I come home and I just order takeout, and that's what I do. That to me is more a reflection that your values somewhere else aren't supporting your well-being, right? Because if you're coming in and it's like the default choice, it's not that you're getting anything more than food out of it, which food is great, but like it's not really reflecting what makes you the healthiest, most vibrant form of yourself. So like, let's back up and figure out what we could do to change that. Nothing wrong with spending money on eating out. It's just like, is that part of your value system? It allows you to really step back and say, okay, what am I doing and why am I doing it? I mean, money is just the currency that kind of facilitates the experiences and the presence that you can have in the world.
Yeah. I had somebody one time was like, money is energy, and we're just exchanging energy for goods and services and things that we value that are important to us. And so understanding what are the things that are important to you. Now, let's say somebody has these values that maybe are misaligned with what their actual financial situation is. Because,
yeah,
I mean, that can happen for so many people. Yeah, my value is to travel, but my income says I cannot travel the way I want to.
For sure. That's where you want to set financial goals. The economic world is complicated for lots of people. So like there's a huge range of what is available. And so, yeah, figuring out where that in the scale of things that are of a high priority, like I want to travel. Well, if you want to travel to 5-star hotels in, 5 different continents, that is a great goal. I have no problem with you having that goal. It's what are you doing to support that as a goal? Or is your idea of travel like I can get in my car and I can just drive until I find an interesting town, I can set up my tent and I can explore. And if that's the same kind of value for you, like that can be done at a much less cost than the other thing. There's all the things in the middle. It's really just like prioritizing where you spend your money because money is finite for most of us. It is 100% finite. So if your goal is to travel, what else in your life is maybe not aligned with that goal? Is that you like to shop. Amazon maybe is like too easy for you to click and do all of that. You can swap that out. You can downgrade that in your life to upgrade something else. There's only so many dollars and you have to decide where to put the extra ones. It just takes a lot of intentionality. Like it really is. It's like being present in your life and deciding, okay, this money is a reflection of my ability to access what I want in the world. So how do I do it?
I will say that also for my personal experience is sometimes I would avoid looking at the things because I knew that the situation maybe wasn't as robust and like beautiful as I wanted it to be. So it was just like, we're just going to like ignore it. We're just going to sweep it under the rug and we're just going to live day to day and figure it out later.
Yes, that is 100% very common. Not everybody actually loves budgets, like I do, but that's why I like this work as well. And so I do think you owe it to yourself to pay enough attention that things aren't sliding out of control without you being aware of it. I think that that's important. It is completely true that people don't necessarily want to have to interact in a very minute detail. There are lots of ways you can set up a system so that you don't really have to pay that much attention. Automating things that are fixed in your life, the mortgage, the car payment, the whatever, you can have a separate account for them. And as long as that account is automatically funded, they go in, they come out, all of that, no big deal. And the thing that you really probably want to pay more attention to is like the discretionary, the flexible accounts, the ones that you can kind of mix and match what comes in and out of that, depending on place in life, the place in the business cycle, the place in lots of different things. So, there's different systems. I do feel like for people who maybe are not inclined to be naturally just nerdy about it, actually looking at a budget, a guideline, a cash flow guideline that is maybe a week long rather than a month long can help. So you give yourself a certain amount that you can spend per week. And at the end of the week, you pay off the credit card. And then you have the same amount next week, you pay off that credit card. That allows you to be pretty in touch with what happened that last week. Usually by the end of the month, you forgot that you spent extra on something 3 weeks ago. And so now it's like, oh, wait, I actually spent way more on my credit cards than I thought. What happened? And, if you can pay it off, that's great. That's the goal, is to pay it off. But maybe you've lost some of that connection with what's actually happening. And it's a little too late to course correct by the time you actually see that, almost 27, 28 days from when the purchase was made. So for people who really struggle with like not wanting to pay attention, figuring out what the system is that is as low maintenance as possible, that allows you to still be aware.
So the question I have for you is, because you've mentioned this a couple times, like paying with credit card versus paying with the cash you have available in your checking account. Can you talk to me about like why you would maybe suggest somebody use a credit card versus who is not a good candidate to use that type of payment method?
Yeah. Credit cards are very common now. Like cash is increasingly less even accepted in some businesses.
And now the penny is gone.
Right. The penny is gone. And so cash is really like still the thing. It's like, it's the money you have to spend, but translating that into payments that are accepted is where credit cards bridge the gap. If you have the ability, like the financial resources, credit cards can be great if you're disciplined about using them. You can get cash back, you can get miles, there's all sorts of things. I would say if the credit card company is giving you something, you're probably paying an annual fee for it. And that can actually still work mathematically. Like depending on how you spend and depending on what's valuable, there are lots of people who really do maximize travel credit cards for their financial positive flow in the financial direction that way, just because they end up with so many miles they can save on airline tickets or something like that. So I'm not opposed to that. The discipline around credit cards is paying it off every month. Like that really is the thing that you have to have as the baseline assumption, because credit card debt gets attached to some pretty high interest rates really quickly. And so you may end up with an introductory rate for a while, but that will bump up to 26, 27, 28, 30%. And now whatever you bought on sale is not a sale anymore because now you're paying that off over time. So if you can be disciplined about using credit responsibly for your own well-being, credit cards are fine. There are things you can get back for them, and that's fine. Debit cards are kind of like the transition between actually turning over dollar bills to someone. They can function effectively like a credit card into your bank account. Those are really recommended for people who have a hard time staying within what is in their cash flow. I really do think young people probably should start off with debit card use because it has its own guardrails. There are credit cards that have pretty low spending limits, so you can run into that before a young person gets into a bad credit card situation. So that can be an okay transitional point for parents trying to get their young teen to early adult to use credit responsibly. But if you have a hard time kind of living within your means, debit card use is probably the way to do it. And it's a habit. It's a habit of how you use your money, how you see your money, and credit cards are too open-ended for some people to really have a positive experience with. And once you have that experience of having too much credit card debt, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to unwind that. It's doable, but I don't wish that on people for sure.
Yeah. Another shiny object is with credit cards. They're like,
Yeah.
sign on bonus, extra mile, spend this amount, da, da, da. And then people can get sucked into like, ooh, there's this new introductory offer. Ooh, there's this new one over here. Oh, if we transfer all this, and they do this game of like shuffling things around. And that's really slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. And you can end up with, I have a mileage account and a Costco account, and I shop at Nordstrom's, so I have a Nordstrom's account. No knock on any of these companies, like they're in their business. But if you're paying $100 a year for each of those accounts, now you're paying $300 in credit card fees. And I'm not sure that starts to be value added for most people. And the shiny objects of interest rate manipulation, for people who have the time and attention, I'm sure it can work out, sort of. But you have to really pay attention to it. If you have a 6-month introductory 0% rate and you're putting something more expensive on that, you have to be disciplined about paying that off over the 6 months. Otherwise, you've now lost the benefit of that because it will jump up really quickly, and now fees and interest start to accrue.
And doesn't the interest go back for the original purchase amount, not just what's remaining on the balance?
I think it depends on the card. Usually they can't charge retroactive interest. They have to charge for what is currently there. So, if you've paid it down and you're almost there, your interest probably won't be that much. I also would say you should read all of the agreements very carefully, because things like that clause that says, right, 0%, but we could go back and charge the sort of founding balance. Like, these are ways that you think they won't do that, but you just don't know that they won't do that.
Hey, Healthy Buzz community. Have you been curious about using a continuous glucose monitor to unlock powerful insights to your metabolic health? Imagine seeing in real time how your body responds to different meals, different workouts, and also the effects of stress. Now, what if you could experience those benefits without being locked into any type of recurring subscription like some of the other continuous glucose monitor programs out there? With my Blood Sugar Savvy course, you'll get exactly that. You'll receive access to 7 engaging learning modules, 2 continuous glucose monitors to start your wellness journey, plus 4 weekly one-on-one video strategy sessions with me where I'll personally guide you to understanding your CGM data. We'll work together to identify your unique blood sugar patterns and create customized strategies for better energy, mood, and overall well-being. Oh, and by the way, this is especially crucial during your peri- and postmenopausal years. Blood Sugar Savvy is about understanding your body on a deeper level, implementing practical strategies, and gaining sustainable knowledge to support your overall health and wellness. Ready to get Blood Sugar Savvy and take control of your metabolic health? Healthy Buzz listeners can save $30 simply by using the code BUZZ at checkout when you enroll at bcw.bcollectivewellness.com/Blood Sugar Savvy. That's bcw.bcollectivewellness.com/Blood Sugar Savvy. Don't forget to use that code BUZZ at checkout for your $30 savings. Your personalized blood sugar journey starts now. It's so funny. My sister and I were talking about, we were at an Iowa State tailgate a couple of weekends ago, and we were like, remember when we were in college and there was always the credit card sign up places right there to get a free t-shirt, right?
Yes.
But then it was different because it wasn't all on the computer, so you could write down fake information and you wouldn't get contacted. But so many people, I think, got like sucked into some shady credit cards that they did not have the actual responsibility to have those because they wanted that free t-shirt.
Free t-shirt. Yeah, there used to be all sorts of travel, like airline discounts, all sorts of things. Yeah, like the companies that produced credit cards, back credit cards, are designed to make money. And they know the statistics around who's going to pay off their bill and who's not. They have a lot of data, and they're using their data to make more money, not to help you out. So there's a cynicism to that, but it is like you shouldn't trust those companies to have your best interest at heart, because they don't. They're looking for more money.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that emergency fund. And you said, you know, like this is building resilience.
Yes.
What should somebody's emergency fund, like, is there a certain amount of months that should cover? Like, what are we looking for with that emergency fund?
You're looking at probably 3 to 6 months is the standard recommendation. I would say it somewhat depends on your living situation. If you are a single self-employed person, you might want to think about 12 months as your target, because there's not a lot of backup to a system in that way. You can have a really solid business and maybe you start to think, okay, my business is rolling, I can back it down to 6 months or something like that. If you're a partnered couple and both of you have pretty stable jobs and you feel like, well, if one of us loses our job, the other person is still working and can cover most of our bills, you could maybe get away with 3 months. Like that seems fine. It really is like looking at how the flow of your expenses go. If you have a car that constantly needs to go into the shop, like those are the kind of emergency repairs. And it's like, okay, well, if I'm tapping that every 6 months because this car is needing $2,000, you might want to just like bump that up a little bit more and a little bit more. 3 to 6 months is the standard, but I do really think you need to take a good look at where your financial vulnerabilities are. What happens if you lose your job? Like medical reasons for leaving or being underemployed are actually one of the things I really want people to kind of have in the back of their mind. It's not even that, is your workplace stable? It's like, what happens if, you're in a car accident and like you're not able to sit at a computer for 40 hours a week because you get headaches and like dizziness and all of these things. Like that's going to decrease your employment. So like just having some like awareness of what the vulnerabilities, how hard it is to go to work, honestly, in some cases for some people. So
yeah, and I can tell you that with the government shutdown, that affected our family because my husband's a federal employee. So it was like, okay, what safety nets do we have in place? And we had seen this coming kind of September-ish. And so we were like, oh, okay, we need to like plan a little bit different for what's going to happen in October and November. And
yes,
I'm really glad that we had those conversations early on to be prepared for what was coming.
And that was, I think, an unexpected length for sure for a lot of people, but also federal employment tends to be historically quite stable. So I think we are somewhat in a new era of people assessing what stable employment looks like in America in a lot of industries, for sure.
So what about, like, somebody might feel like they don't even have enough at the end of the month, the week, to contribute to an emergency fund. Like they might feel like, I only have $25 extra that I can contribute to an emergency fund right now. Some people might be like, I'm just going to go spend that $25 because it's not going to matter. Does it matter?
It matters. It matters a lot. I would say if you are shaving it down to $25, we'll say a week or even a month, you probably need to consider sort of a side gig or something to like build a little bit more income resilience. Like I would always look at, there's income and expenses and what can change, right? So looking at that, but then there is huge value in small amounts of money put aside over time. And if you can manage to put away $25 a month, and I think this is like a realistic goal for some people really starting out in their like late teens, 20s, there isn't a lot of financial room for error in a lot of people's lives there. And that is true across generations of people. Like this is just the starting phase of life. So build the habit of seeing the value in that $25 going into an account that you don't touch unless you really need it. And if you can manage to like build that nest egg to the point where it's like, okay, now that's 3 months of my living expenses. Now you can kind of think about like, what would happen if I did that every single month for the rest of my life? The math on that actually works out really, really well for people. There are lots of statistics, lots of ways to calculate this, but $25 a month from the age of 20 to 30 is actually probably way more powerful than more money from 50 to 60. You could triple that quadruple that. And your lifetime benefit from saving when you're younger is absolutely off the charts compared to waiting until you're much older. So if there's a message out there for young people who might be listening, or people trying to educate their children, right? Sharing financial education with your young people is great. It's small amounts of saving. Like there's no amount that's too small to save because you just don't know when you're going to need it. And if you are allowed to just keep that and not use it, the compounding effects of that are amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What are your thoughts on high yield savings accounts?
High yield savings accounts are great in the sense that the average savings account attached to a checking account will get you pennies in terms of interest. High yield savings accounts, what I would also put next to it is a money market account, which is attached to sort of a brokerage, which is going to be the big financial institutions, your Vanguard, your Fidelity, and there's lots of others. I'm just going to name those two, but there's lots of others. How they make you money is a little bit different. But what they're both going to do is they're going to give you some number of percent, like somewhere probably between 2 and 4% of growth on the money that you've invested there. High yield savings accounts can have a credit card like quality because they're attached to a bank. There's often an introductory rate that can be quite attractive, and it's for so many months. And then it kind of reverts back to the sort of standard bank rate. So again, they can look great at the beginning and you're like, I got this. This is awesome. And you sustain it. But like at 6 months, it's like, oh, wait, now you're not actually making as much as you were when you started. So like, again, read the fine print, make sure that that rate has some sort of guarantee or like they're going to keep that up. All of these interest rates are attached to the overall economic space that we're in federally. So interest rates come and go. I would much rather have your emergency fund in a high yield savings account or a money market account than somewhere like in your checking account and it's just floating in the background. Make it one step removed from your regular cash flow so that you have to decide to use it if you need it.
That is solid advice. I really appreciate that. So we know that like our financial wellness situation does shift dramatically across a lifespan, right? We kind of touched on like when we're in our 20s and maybe we don't have as much discretionary money, but then things kind of shift as we grow in our career. What are some of the biggest but common financial pitfalls you see women encounter during major like life transitions? I mean, this could be anything from like a career change to having children to retirement. All of those things can be really big transitions, but there can be some pretty significant pitfalls to them. So let's talk about pitfalls and then we'll talk about the other side. Let's talk about something positive about those two.
Yes. So pitfalls, statistically, women, we probably make less money per dollar than men throughout the course of our career.
Unfortunately, we're still living that.
We're still living that. I think the statistic I saw the other day was 83 cents to a dollar. So it's maybe creeping up, but women are more likely to just make less money. And they're also more likely to choose to leave the workplace for children, for parents, aging parents, right? Like it's sort of this double-edged sandwich problem, which is you're more likely to stay home with children either when they're young or throughout their work reduction throughout their childhood, as well as then have to care for your older parents. So as such, women also then are amassing lower Social Security benefits, which is way down the road. So if you get to that point, you actually have less income in retirement than a man because you've chosen not to earn as much for lots of value-oriented reasons often, right? So that's one thing to be aware of is like those are the choices you can choose to make within your family. And they do have consequences that stretch out forever in your financial life. The other thing I would say is particularly within partnerships, is this imbalance of who knows about the family money, who manages the family money, and then sort of who has access to it or how everybody accesses it differently. This tends to be a problem as people get divorced. If you and your partner have a great relationship and perhaps there's one of you, I don't want to like just be heteronormative and say it's always a he, but like one person has the control of the money. They pay the bills, they know where the investments are, they understand the cash flow, and the other person is just like doing the stuff. They're maybe doing the grocery shopping and all of this, but they really don't see the bigger picture. I really, really encourage everybody, no matter what your state of relationship is to have good conversations with each other, because if something happens to one of you, the person who has the financial knowledge, it is so painful and so hard for the person who isn't in that space to pick up the pieces. So A, have conversations, but B, also like I don't want to be pessimistic about anybody's relationship, but like divorce is really hard for women financially. Like it is really, really impactful for women because they do tend to have less benefits coming to them later in life. Now you can access your spouse's record and there's a few things that you can talk about, Social Security claiming strategies for that. But like picking up the pieces of a financial life that you weren't completely hooked into and then going forth is really, really hard. I actually recommend women keep a credit card or a small bank account in their own name, independent of how your relationship is, so that you have your own ability to pick up a piece without having to separate something depending on what's going on there. So unfortunately, divorce is really a painful experience, and it mostly negatively impacts women financially more than men.
Yes. And, I talk a lot about perimenopause and menopause in the work that I do. And there's a huge shift that happens with our hormones, which then also we see more divorce rates for women who are perimenopausal and postmenopausal because of these hormonal shifts and like just a breakdown in communication. And all of that is so important to have these conversations. And where are we at financially? I've also heard stories of people being blindsided and not knowing that they were in a world of despair financially because the other partner did not share that information with them.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely have clients right now in that situation, and it is hard. Finances are very intimate. Like your financial life is a very intimate part of your life. And discussing it with friends, like women are actually great, probably more about discussing their perimenopausal symptoms with their friends than discussing their finances. And I would argue that maybe the same kind of community support vibe that you can get from your friends from a health perspective could be extended to a finance perspective, because those are the people who can help you be the checks and balances about what's going on in your own relationship with money personally, or as your partnership with money in your family. Like being a little bit more open about how this is impacting you is important. And financial stress we see increases blood pressure, it increases headaches, it decreases sleep, it has negative impacts on depression and all of these other physical things that people experience in their life can definitely be exacerbated or potentially causation, correlation, hard to say, but all of those things are super important to like look at in your own personal health perspective.
Right, because that then has such an impact on your overall physical and emotional health, which is such a huge part, again, of your overall health and wellness status. So what about retirement? So sometimes people don't feel like that they're maybe the right age to be concerned about retirement, or maybe in the financial situation to contribute financially to a retirement fund. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of retirement funding?
Absolutely. One thing, just from a positive thing about women, is women tend to be better investors than men.
Go us. Good job.
Yeah, I know. The statistics on that are actually super interesting. And maybe it is because women tend to feel like they're not as knowledgeable and not as confident. So they make more conservative choices, which tend to work out actually better for them over time. So all that by saying, like, women should invest for their retirement, because Social Security is not going to be enough to live off. Like, it's a supplement, but it's not enough to live off of. If you are in a workplace that offers a pension still, and that is the government, like there's certainly those places do exist, and workplaces are constantly changing what they're trying to offer in terms of different plans, that can certainly be a really strong place to come into retirement with as well. And there is nothing as important as having your own money that you can control. Your own destiny is in your own hands. The stock market is going to come and go. And like For some people, it takes a lot of discipline. For other people, it doesn't take much discipline to ignore it on a day-to-day basis if your retirement timeframe is distant, right? But just over the course of time, the statistics are that the stock market goes up and you want to be in it in order to grow your wealth, right? And if you grow your wealth, you will have more resilience in retirement. And the thing about retirement now is like we're attached to kind of 65 as maybe a plus or minus retirement years, but like people are living a long time and they can definitely slide into retirement in their 60s, or like even if you wanted to work until you're 70, you could be a very healthy go-getting retiree. And you want to have the funds to support that. Like that's a value that's in the distant future, but like I want that for people. I want them to have the money to be able to say, I want to travel, I want to pick up 5 different hobbies, I want to like whatever, and feel like the money is there to support that. And the plan and the knowledge, like this is the thing, is like you don't want to be guessing and crossing your fingers. You really want to say, okay, we've done the numbers. I can't control so many things about the world. I can't project what the future of the stock market's going to be, other than I can say historically, it's really the best option for growing your wealth. And so you want that. And then you also want to think like, if you're going to have a 30 or 40 year retirement, there is going to be a downslide to that. There is going to be the financial needs to support your health at the sort of terminal decade of your life. And you want to have resilience around that as well. So really thinking of like, you have kind of 40 years to save for retirement, and then maybe you have 40 years to spend it all. And there are so many strategies, but I would argue it does not need to be complicated. Like to the point of shiny objects. There's lots of things out there, and I have certainly seen it in my clients. As I look at their investments, I'm like, you chased all the shiny objects that came up on like whatever your news feed of finance is because you have all of this stuff. I would say if you're going to invest, you don't need to invest in complicated things. Index funds work great. They don't cost very much at all. And just put money into them and let them grow, and just keep putting money into them and let it grow. And don't look, if you're someone who gets anxious, if you look at the stock market, it's going to come up, it's going to go down. The trajectory is like, what are you going to do with your life? So one of the things I like to make people sort of think about is every dollar you have needs to have a purpose in your life and a use by date. And depending on what that is, that's where you put the money, right? So if you get your paycheck, most of that, the purpose is to pay your bills. And the use by date is like this month, right? So fine. Then there's okay, I've got my emergency fund. So that's in a high yield savings account or a money market account. The use by date is like, is needed forever, right? And then the rest of it is like, how close are you to retirement or to maybe a big goal or something like that? So you can have we want to remodel our house goal, saving money for that. We want to take a big trip and a sabbatical goal, saving money for that. Like that can have another layer of like, we know that's a 3 to 5 year goal. So we're going to like maybe boost that out of money market account, high yield savings into something that maybe gets you a little bit more return, but nothing crazy because you know you're going to use it. And then there's like 20 years down the road. I'm going to look at that as my use by date is that first trip I take in retirement. I'm going to go have a great time with my friends or my partner or whatever. So that's a long horizon. So it needs to be in a different kind of account. There's tax reasons, there's investment reasons, like there's all sorts of stuff that you can do in those choices. But like, it's okay for that to be off to the side. Don't look at it. It'll be fine if you just kind of keep investing. Don't get, pulled here, there, and everywhere with different things. And over time, you'll be amazed at what grows.
Yeah, that compound interest is so impactful.
It is like the math on that is really cool. Like, I hope people feel empowered to feel like they're small, what seems like small dollar values. It doesn't look like a lot today, but it will look like a lot over time. And that's really the take-home message is a small habits done consistently over time. This is true in everything, right? If you move in a small amount every day, that will preserve your health over time. Like all of these things in your wellness stable of techniques are kind of overlapping and very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think about too that oftentimes people, their employer will offer like a match when it comes to their retirement. So
Yep.
everybody should be taking advantage of that if your employer offers that for sure.
Yes. That is 100% free money. I'm an emergency fund first person just because I think you have a harder time accessing money that's in a retirement account.
Yeah.
Like there's penalties and things like that. Build your emergency fund first, then take advantage of the match. If you can do those in parallel, that's even better. Like if you have the cash flow to do both, 100% build the emergency fund and take advantage of your employer's match, because free money is free money and it is great. And that compound is now compounding on your employer's money too, right? And that's beautiful. So 100%. There are good tax reasons for taking advantage of employer sponsored plans. The employer sponsored plans continue to evolve as different tax legislation and action in that direction. So increasingly, employers are now offering what's like the pre tax accounts, which is giving you the tax deduction for contributing today, or a Roth account, which allows that money to grow tax free for the rest of its life. There's value in both. And I would say coming into retirement with different types of taxing accounts. So you can have your tax deferred, you can have your tax free, and then your straight up brokerage account is just taxable. It gets very complicated, but more buckets are good. Having all three buckets is good.
Good. What about for the people who are self-employed and their retirement fund options?
Yes. So self employed people can have what's called a SEP IRA. It works a little bit different in terms of your business finances, but you effectively get the tax deduction in your business for the contribution that the business contributes to your retirement account. That's great. You can also open up a solo 401k account, which is also similar to the 401ks that are offered in corporate life, but you can only have a spouse as an employee. Like there's some rules about what applies. Or you can, if your business is big enough, you can just open up a 401k. Like that can make some sense depending on your business. So the business size really matters in terms of what kind of business retirement account you would probably choose.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think that this was a wonderful conversation. It's showing us that, like, when we understand our financial situation, I really feel like we feel more empowered. We feel more empowered with the dollars that we're spending and the dollars that we're saving, and how we're building trust with ourselves that we know how to navigate these money situations. How do you work with people as a financial advisor?
Yeah, so I do a range of things. I work sometimes with people just on cash flow and debt management, right? So we just start with that. We don't even talk about investments or retirement because we have to get that financial wellness habit established, all the way through working on like nearing retirement, where we want those buckets of money to be. How do we want to make sure we're preserving enough of that for imminent use, right? We want to make sure that there's a safe amount of money that's available, and some that's still thinking like if you're going to retire, you still might have 30 years. So like we still have to think about a long-term time horizon. I commonly work with families, single people in their 30s, 40s who are like, I just want to make sure I'm heading in the right direction. I'm taking advantage of everything my employer does. There's nothing that I'm sort of missing. And we look at a sort of a comprehensive, take a look at insurance and estate and wills and things like that, which are really important for your financial life. They're just like the dark side planning part of it, because they usually are protecting against things that we really don't want to have happen. Yeah, cash flow, retirement to work, education planning is a huge part of it. It also comes into the conversation of like, how do you think you're going to have to support a parent in their sort of terminal decade of life in some sort of way with long-term care, or you're going to have to like go on family and medical leave because you're going to have to reduce your hours and all of these things. We have those conversations as well. So I really try to make it whatever the family or the couple or the person needs, rather than I don't have an ongoing contract with people. They come, I charge on an hourly basis for the work that we do together, and then I'm available in the future. I kind of work like an accountant or an attorney rather than a financial planner who has an ongoing contractual relationship. I don't manage investments, but I do give advice on what you can do with your investments. So I just believe people feel empowered if they have access to their own money and have the education and the confidence that they're doing the right thing. So I really try to support that. There are other things. If you feel like there's sort of financial trauma in your life, or like you have a plan, but you're not able to implement the plan, there are financial therapists out there who actually can deal with people just on like what their money emotions are and how those are getting in the way of a financial life that's happy and robust. There's other options out there for people if they're coming at it from a different angle.
All right. Amazing. Well, how can people connect with you, Lisa?
So I have a website that you can actually just go on and schedule just a conversation. Like there's no charge for it. It's just an initial conversation. What we're really talking about is like, what is top of mind for you? And what would you hope to get out of a financial coaching or planning relationship? And if it's a good fit, we can move forward. If it's not a good fit for me, I am connected to lots of people and can hopefully refer you to the right person if that seems appropriate.
Okay. We will put your website in the show notes so people can reach out, connect with you. Lisa can work with anybody pretty much anywhere. When you connect with her on that free consultation, she can let you know to what capacity, if something is beyond the capacity of what is allowed due to these different regulations. But this was such a great conversation, and I hope a lot of people took a lot of great information from it.
Great. Thank you so much. I love having this conversation. It's wonderful.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Healthy Buzz. I hope this conversation has left you feeling seen, supported, and ready to take the next step in your health journey. Love what you heard? Make sure you subscribe to Healthy Buzz so you never miss an honest conversation. And if you found this valuable, please take a moment to leave a review. I truly appreciate it. For exclusive weekly tips and holistic strategies, be sure to subscribe to my weekly newsletter. The link is in the show notes. Remember, this isn't just nutrition, it's permission to trust your body. I'll catch you on the next episode of Healthy Buzz.